Hey, everybody, and welcome to our Coral YouTube channel where we are going to be talking with Tamara about some of the really cool stuff that she's been up to lately. Hi, Tamara. Thanks for joining
Hi,
us.
so
So,
excited to be
first,
here.
who are you and what do you do?
Well, this will be fun. I'm excited to talk to all of your audience and kind of, tell you a little bit about what we're doing.
For sure. Good. So, yeah, how did you get into aquarium keeping?
Well, I don't know how far back we want to go, but
Go crazy.
I kind of fell in love with marine biology. I went to Hawaii when I was young. I was probably, 11 or 11, 12. And I fell in love with it. I just thought it was absolutely incredible. And then when I was in college, I got the opportunity to work at a saltwater fish store. And then I was just like completely hooked. So I got my first tanks and just kind of like dug into it. And, from there,
Cool.
I've been doing it for 24 years now.
So yeah, you've had quite the varied background in the aquarium industry. So tell us about some of the jobs in your store and everything.
Yeah. I worked for quite a bit of time, like at the fish store, and just kind of getting immersed in the community. But I then opened up a wholesale coral business. So I grew corals for a living, and then I sold them to wholesalers. So I kind of wanted to. I saw a lot of the corals that we were taking from the ocean, and we were just like taking everything instead of aquaculturing. So I wanted to make a little bit of an impact there with, providing some of the soft corals in SPS. This was like way back when it wasn't as common to
Right.
aquaculture and do all the coral fragging. But that I started doing that, and from there I decided to open up a saltwater fish store because I noticed a lot of people that were buying corals and fish didn't necessarily have the best advice about what kind of worked for their tank. And I was a victim of that as well. Like when I first started in the early 2000s, you go into a fish store and you just kind of buy whatever the person recommends, and you would just be like, well,
Uh-huh.
is this fish good for me, or what do you recommend for my 20-gallon nano? And I bought all the wrong fish. Like,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, I didn't have a cell phone back then, and you just kind of just buy whatever. I mean, I bought like a grouper for a little 60-gallon tank. I mean, like,
Oh
you don't know,
no.
right? You
Right, you
trust
wouldn't
that the
know.
person talking to you is giving you really good advice, and
Yeah.
you don't realize that that is not in your best interest. Sometimes they're just selling you things. So
Yeah.
I decided to open up a retail store, but my focus was on education. So I did a lot of classes. So I started doing a whole series from "So You Think You Want a Fish Tank" all the way to like advanced coral care. So I love doing that in my fish store. So every week we do a different class, and we had a whole group of just really incredible people just trying to teach them saltwater. And we do a lot of community outreach and things
Nice.
like that. And then when I had the store, I decided to go a little bit more into research. So in the early 2000s, I kind of dug into aquaculture. So I kind of got addicted to like phytoplankton and copepods and how cool that was. Like, just like
Standard,
this
right?
whole
That happens
world
to
under a
everyone
microscope.
eventually.
Yeah. So I started breeding like seahorses and, really basic like clownfish, early 2000s. But when I had my fish store, I kind of reignited that. So I decided to go back to school. So I went to UF. I got my degree in fish health and aquaculture. And then I decided to dive into the research world. I was kind of amazed by how many species we knew how to breed, but they weren't
Mhm.
actually readily available. There was
Sure.
the clownfish, the diamondbacks, the gobies, some seahorses, but there weren't that many available to the normal hobbyist. And
Hmm.
so I was like, well, we need to fix that. We need to fix like how to commercialize these species. So I kind of dug into the research world, and I did that for a lot of years. And I just started a company called Manta Systems, and what we do is we write articles. And this is everything that I wish I would have known when I first started out. So I'm just kind of writing everything from beginner posts to more advanced corals, just a little bit of education. Everything
Great.
free, but it's just me kind of just trying to save people some of the mistakes that I've made. So
No kidding. Yeah.
really kind of focused on right now is just trying to get all the education out there as much as possible. And, none of it's perfect. I'm just trying to like, do a little bit. And, I've had
Yeah.
people like post me on my articles, oh, you're missing this. I'm like, awesome, great. Let me include it in the article. I want it to be as good as possible. And I certainly don't know everything. So,
Sure.
you know, it's kind of my focus right now is just trying to get everybody to, um, learn as much as possible. A lot of the hobby is, it's opinion versus
Yeah.
fact. So a lot of it is, what works in one tank doesn't necessarily work in somebody else's tank. But if it worked for
Hmm.
them, it becomes fact. Or if it didn't
Yeah.
work for them, it becomes fact. And so there's so much misinformation in the hobby. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm trying to battle with a little bit with my articles.
That's great. I mean, that's such an important thing to do, and obviously, as a print publication, well, and online too, we do a lot of that as well.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
just it's great that there's so much information on the internet for people to access, but so much of it is so far from accurate or helpful. And I can imagine being a beginner. I mean, we've all been in the hobby now for such a long time, but if you were just starting out, I don't know if you'd know where to look. Like what would you
Yeah.
listen to? Who would you listen to? What would you believe? And
Yeah.
it's tough. So I think just trying to find ways to stand out with your content is so important so that you can help
Yeah.
people be successful. So yeah,
Yeah, and it's
great.
hard because I always tell beginners like you don't want to get all your information from one source, but you don't want to get
Yeah.
it from, every source. You kind of got to figure out like
Yeah.
what sources you trust and kind of, blend the information and come up with what works best for them. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's
Yeah.
great. So so you just started Manta, right? Pretty
Yeah, I started
recently.
like 2.5 months ago.
Oh, yeah, new. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty
And
great. So we have about 50 articles so far. So I try to write I was doing like one a day, but I've slowed down. I'm like 3 to 5 a week right now. It's a lot of work. So
that's still a ton. 3 to 5, slow down. That's still a lot.
yeah.
Very cool though. And you're planning to launch a podcast, yes?
I am. I'm actually really
Ah.
excited. So, I didn't mention it before, but I went back to school. So I decided I wanted to start another company. And
Mhm.
so I went back to school. I got my MBA and my MS in innovation and entrepreneurship. And so the podcast, I'm kind of blending my love of both worlds, business and saltwater. So it's called the Tides of Business, and I'm going to
Cool.
interview CEO founders, all about their journey. I want to know about their entrepreneurial journey, not just the highlight reel of everything that went right, but also everything that went wrong. Like I want to know about their failures, their pivots, their lessons learned, their co-founder issues. And
Yeah.
I've had two businesses now. I'm building my third, and there's so many things to learn. There's so many lessons, and it's okay to celebrate that. It's okay
Yeah.
to celebrate that we're all on a journey of like learning, and we don't
Yep.
demand excellence. We just demand, movement forward. So, it's called,
Sure.
failing forward.
Yeah, it is. It's an accurate term, right? You just have to keep moving. That's
Exactly.
great though. And I mean, there's certainly no shortage of people to talk to in the hobby. It's one of those things where you might meet on the common ground of caring about fish and aquariums, but then you realize that so many people have these entrepreneurial backgrounds and
Mhm.
drives to just kind of do their own thing. And it's cool to see how many people are making a difference in the industry and how they choose to do that. So that should be a great podcast.
I've talked to so many people, they just have side hustles,
Yeah,
like even if they have a main
for
full-time
sure.
job, they do something on the side that's just, whatever level of, maybe they just sell some corals on the side all the way to, maybe a maintenance business or something.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's neat. Well, and it's nice too because these are all people who are such great mentors for other people starting aquariums. Like if you're
It's cool like
passionate about it, that's gonna, rub off on other people. We actually just did, we're gonna do it for coral as well, but we just did a large survey for our Amazonas customer base to kind of find out where people fell in like, well, all the demographics. We wanted to do all our new demographics because we haven't redone it in a while. And it was really encouraging to see how many people mentor other people who are in the hobby, new
Yeah.
people. And it's such a cool thing to know that like it's not just a personal thing where you're like, oh, I like my tank. That's nice. But we all care so much that we want other people to experience that joy of aquarium keeping too. And it's nice. It's encouraging because
Yeah, I mean, everybody seems to want everybody else to be successful. So
yeah,
it's like we love the hobby and we want to get somebody else to make sure they love it as well. So everything that's really
for sure.
frustrating, we try to, minimize that pain as much as possible.
Absolutely. It's always a good thing. Okay, so the podcast will be launching soon.
Hmm.
What? Oh, you worked at an aquarium for a while, right?
Yeah, I worked at the Research Institute Hub
Oh,
SeaWorld
yes.
Research Institute in San Diego, and then I worked at the
Yeah.
Dallas World Aquarium, and then I'm currently the head of a private aquarium.
That is so neat. So no, your focus has been on live foods for a bit, right?
Yeah, I mean that's
Okay.
kind of where I was in the research world. So,
Yeah.
in order to breed fish, you have to have the entire food chain, and then you have
Yeah.
somebody that kind of works with more the larval side. I split that job into two. Sometimes one person has to do it all, but usually it's easier if it's split into two different jobs. And I usually worked on the live foods part. At the Dallas World Aquarium, I did both. So it
Wow.
just depends on what's needed.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Um, how did you kind of get into the interest in live foods? Because I mean, so many people don't really have a background in that. That's a really specific niche. So
It's so niche, and you have to be like a certain kind of nerd to just be like phytoplankton. Heck yeah, that's amazing.
for sure.
Yeah, actually, I worked with this gentleman. His name was Scotty Moots. And we
Okay.
both worked at the fish store, and he was so passionate about phytoplankton that he would just teach me everything, and I just, absorbed all of his passion. And he grew kind of clams on the side, and so I was just hooked. As soon as he showed me like rotifers and copepods, I was just absolutely, that's amazing.
It's
Yeah.
true. It's such cool stuff.
And I am kind of a big nerd. Like I spoke at MACNA way back when, and like the
Yeah,
whole thing was just, phytoplankton and copepods and all that kind of stuff. I just nerd out.
it's
I
great.
love a beautiful phytoplankton culture.
Right? Well, and it's just our capacity to be able to take these really cool macro shots of this stuff has just grown so much. And even with our own phones, we can do so much now. And it's just
Absolutely.
opens up a totally new world and a completely different perspective on all of this tiny stuff, this little microcosm that goes on within our aquariums. And yeah, it's fun. It makes it even more exciting to learn
It
about. So
is. Yeah, it's
that's
so
good.
exciting. I love all the little teeny tiny creatures, and I don't know.
Yeah.
All of it makes the hobby amazing.
It does. Yeah, it's exciting. So you obviously have a million things going on, but do you have time to keep tanks at home still?
I only have a 20-gallon. I have a Red Sea Nano, just a little small reef tank right
Nice.
now. It's
Yeah.
corals and mostly invertebrates. I like weird invertebrates now. I've just been doing fish for so
Yes.
long. And in a small tank, you can't do that many fish, but you can do a lot of invertebrates. So I pick all the weird, like little snails and hermit crabs and little pom pom crabs,
Fun.
sexy shrimp, and all that. It's so
Oh
much
my, yeah, the
fun.
pom-com crabs are just something else. I was in Indonesia like a month ago and finally saw my first one in the wild, which
Oh,
is so
that's
funny
so
because I've seen them in
cool.
people's tanks, but then somebody pointed out and I was like, oh,
Like
they're
zoom
real.
in.
It's for real, real.
That's so cool. Yeah. I
It
mean,
was
you've had so
fun.
many diving, like amazing experiences. That would be very cool. Like seeing
It's
in
funny how there are
reality.
always, yeah, right. There are always a few species that you just think, I'm never going to actually see one of these. And then when you do, it feels kind of surreal. You're like, oh, did someone plant this here? No, no, it just lives
You're
there.
like, what? That's so cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
awesome.
that was fun. How cool. All
Yeah.
right. So yeah, podcast. Where are you going to be putting out your podcast so people can find it?
So I was gonna do it on Apple Podcast and Spotify.
Great. Okay. Good.
That should be
Wherever
live
people get their
probably. I'm
podcasts.
filming my first interview this week and my second interview next week. So it'll probably about 2 weeks. I'll have my first podcast going.
Okay.
And I'll
Exciting.
be on YouTube as well. I'm gonna film it, so I'll have like a little YouTube channel when I get it set up.
Great.
That's my
Okay.
task
That
for
sounds,
tonight is to set up my channel.
oh boy, you've got a lot ahead of you.
Yeah.
It'll be
It's good
great
though.
though.
It's so much fun, like this is
Yeah,
the kind of thing that gives me energy. So
definitely. You have to keep moving, keep doing new stuff. It keeps it fresh, or in this case, salty, but
it keeps it salty.
keeps it salty. Yeah, that can be the tagline, keeping it salty. Yeah.
I like it.
What was I gonna ask you? Hmm. I forget. I had something specific that I was gonna ask you before, and now it has run away from me. Oh, just in terms of getting into aquariums initially, was there like a first experience that kind of drew you in, or a person that got you hooked, or something you saw?
Not really. I was just kind of obsessed with like everything saltwater. Like to me, it was a
Yeah,
whole nother world. Like the fish were
yeah,
cool. The invertebrates were just incredible. Just like so many
yeah.
different things. Like in freshwater, you do have all the invertebrates, but in saltwater you have like even more. Like
Mm-hmm.
that to me
Oh yeah.
was the big draw. Yeah, I
That's
kind of
neat.
just got hooked from there. So it wasn't any one person or anything.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was just all of it. I was just kind of fascinated, you know.
that's nice. Yeah, it's a good place to be. So I loved that you did classes at your store. Those sounded great.
Mhm.
Um, what have you done with those? Have you like kept your curriculum? Are you going to do anything else with those? With any of that
Um,
info? I don't know, because
yeah,
that
I
sounds
haven't
really
even
fun.
planned on it. Like honestly, they were like old school PowerPoints, and
Oh
the
yeah.
classes were honestly like 2-3 hours long, where I would teach everything from like how to mix salt water, how to test salt water, how to
Wow.
estimate. Like we would do everything live in the class, so people felt like really
Yeah.
comfortable with it. But yeah, I mean, they're just like old school PowerPoints at this point. And honestly, a lot of that's probably like super outdated because it was like so long ago. Like all the choral stuff is probably
Sure.
all like new information now.
Yeah,
So,
probably. It is kind of constantly evolving and new information all the time.
but I am putting out an ebook that's going to be ready in like 3 weeks. I was going to offer like a free
Ah,
ebook
okay.
for disease identification and medication. So, like if you
Oh,
have anything that you think is like wrong with your fish, you can read the articles about identifying the types of disease. There's more than 30 articles that are going to be put together. So it's all the different types of diseases and then all the different corresponding medications that go with it. So that'll
wow.
be available on the website. You can just download it for free.
Oh, that'll be great.
Yeah,
I'll have to make sure that I get all of the pertinent links from you so that everybody can follow along and join and learn more things. That's
absolutely. Yeah,
great.
we have a lot going on. I'm really passionate about education and trying to help spread out, as much positive, good information as possible instead of, taking a lot of that opinion out of just putting
Mm,
out like the raw facts. So that's kind of one of
yeah.
my big like passions, I should say.
Yeah. Well, there certainly needs to be more of that. There's been a lot of emotional decision making going on in the hobby for a while in recent years. So I think
Wild.
we could use a little bit more science and logic to it. That would be useful. Cool. Well, this sounds great. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I will make sure that we get everybody your info so that they can follow along with your journey. I'm excited. And yeah, thanks for everything you do to help educate people about the aquariums that
It
we all
sounds
love to keep.
great. Thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciate your time and interviewing and just kind of getting to
Yeah,
know Manta.
for sure. That sounds great. All right, well, we'll keep up and we'll talk soon.
All right, bye.
Okay, bye.